reviewing Worth a Buy's Rainbow Six Siege re-review. Hey, what's up guys, Irish Turtle here, and in today's video, as the title suggests, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be reviewing Worth a Buy's Rainbow Six Siege review. I swear to God, try saying that 5 times fast, it's a mouthful and a half. But yeah, basically what I'm going to be doing in this video is giving my opinions on the Worth a Buy's max opinions on Siege in its current state. Now, I do just want to point out before this video starts, I do agree with a lot of what he says in his video, and I think he makes a lot of good points. You do have to remember, with his review of Siege, he is coming at Siege with a fresh set of eyes, essentially. He is giving his first impressions as to how the game is presented now to how it was presented to him 2 years ago. He isn't coming at the game with a set of eyes that have been there the entire way through. So it's not fair to try and compare his opinions and his gripes with the game to somebody who's been playing it the entire time. I just want to point that out. It's a very key thing to note. I also want to suggest that you guys actually go and check out his video either after or before you watch mine, simply because I'm not going to be showing any of his footage. I think it's not fair for me to cut and paste things that he says. I think it's worth watching his entire video in its entirety before you form an opinion, negative or positive, based on what I've said. So I will leave a link to the video in the description below. I'm also going to leave a link to his channel in general. The reason I'm doing this is because, full disclosure, I am actually a subscriber of Worth a Buy. I do like the content. I love his channel. I think his no-nonsense reviews are really good. They're great to see compared to things like IGN and GameSpot. It's no nonsense, no bullshit. He just goes, yes, this game's worth a buy if it is worth it, and no, it's not worth a buy if it isn't worth it. And I think that's refreshing in today's kind of review market. But with all the housekeeping out of the way, let's actually just jump into the video. So the first part of his video, as always, is him just reading the description of the game. Generally speaking, it's just a bit of a piss take. It's just him reading what the developers have said about the game and giving his little opinion on it. Now, generally speaking, I have no problems with this. The only thing I will point out is he does kind of take a shot at the Season Pass. I understand where he's coming from with regards to that, but I also do have to defend the Season Pass. When it comes to Siege, you have to think the Season Pass had to have some sort of worth to make people want to buy it. And I think giving people an early 7 days access to operators isn't the worst thing in the world, generally speaking. He implies that 7 days early access gives you the time to become really good with the operator, and in Siege that's not the case. But again, as he's got a new set of eyes to the game, he's not necessarily going to know that, so he might just assume that a week is all you need to learn the operator's nuances and abilities. So again, I can forgive him for that, even though I disagree with it. Okay, he then moves on to the options in the game, as he always does when he starts a video, and again, I completely agree with him, generally speaking. The only issue he has is an FOV slider. Now, he does say the FOV slider doesn't go up to 90, which is only goes up to 90 rather, which he's a little bit disappointed with. What I think he doesn't realise is the FOV slider is actually a vertical one, not a horizontal one as he wants. Now, the reason I think Ubisoft didn't put a horizontal FOV slider in is because they want it to be a fair competitive shooter. They don't want it to be a case of people with a higher FOV get more vision and can see more, so they try and keep it as balanced as possible. So I understand why there's no horizontal FOV slider, but again, that's just a personal preference thing, and I've got no problems with him not liking the fact that you can't do it more. He then moves on to the first issue he has, which are major bugs that are still in Siege that were there at launch. Now again, as I've said at the start, this is the points he makes are completely 100% fair to somebody who has only played the game at launch and only played the game now. He points out that there are issues that he noticed 2 years ago that are still there. For example, floating guns, bodies not ragdolling properly, those sorts of cosmetic problems. Now yes, I 100% agree with him, those cosmetic problems are big issues, because they were big issues at the start of the game and they've not been removed in 2 years. However, being somebody who's played the game since launch to now, I can say obviously, yes, they fixed a lot of sort of gameplay bugs. They fixed things like defenders being able to run out for longer than 2 seconds. They used to be 5 seconds. They fixed spawn peeking. They fixed a lot of the competitive edges to Siege rather than the cosmetic problems. So while yes, he's pointing out that there's bugs they haven't fixed, Obviously, they have fixed a lot of bugs generally. But again, as I said, I can understand why he points those bugs out, because he's not been playing it the entire time, and as somebody who's reviewing it that way, he has every right to point out the cosmetic bugs, because that's the things that he'll notice. That's the things that a new player would notice, who his review is pitched at. So, generally speaking, I think those points are 100% fair, and I don't think people pointing that out is really representative of the review he gives. Okay, he then moves on to talk about there is a lack of content in Siege. Now, this is one of the few things that I really disagree with him on, generally because of how he's done other reviews. So with Siege, basically he complains there is a lack of content with regards to the fact that there is only a terrorist hunt mode and a versus mode. Now, if I compare this to another review he did of a game called Overwatch, which you might have heard of, in that review he doesn't complain there is a lack of content, even though it's pretty much the exact same as Siege. Both of these games have basically just multiplayer content with no single player story. He knocks Siege for this, but doesn't knock Overwatch for it. Now, personally, I think that's a little bit unfair. I don't think that's balanced. And that's one of the gripes I do have with him in this video. But, you know, that's just personal preference, I guess. And he does also explain why he's not happy that Siege doesn't have a single player later on into the video. So I can kind of understand where he's coming from. But generally speaking, I don't think that's a fair point to make, especially if you're going to overlook it with Overwatch. But, right. Another thing he points out is like the fact that the operators in Siege are released in a very stupid way. He gives this really great analogy for it that I absolutely love. And basically what he says is, once you've bought the game, you should have access to everything operator-wise. You should have all the operators straight away, because that's the way you make the game fair and balanced. And I do actually kind of agree with him on this. The way he gives the analogy, which I think is great, is it's like you go around a shopping centre or a shopping food Tesco's supermarket sort of thing. You buy all your food and you put it in a basket. And then once you've purchased all that food, the cashier takes that food, puts it next to her and goes, right, you've bought all of this, you can have it all, but what you need to do is you need to spend another 20 minutes running around the supermarket, and if you do that, I will give you this can of beans. That's the way you unlock it. Or, if you want to give me cash, you can get these beans straight away. And that is essentially what Siege does. You purchase the game, you have all of the operators there, the basic operators, and once you've done that, you then have to run around and grind to get the operators unlocked. It's unless you want to pay more money. Now, generally speaking, I agree with him. That's a very bad business practice. I don't think that was a sensible thing on Ubisoft's behalf. But I will point out I understand why Ubisoft did it. Ubisoft originally put operators behind sort of these payment walls or these renown walls because they didn't think Siege was going to be a long-lasting game. Basically, they made it a way to extend the life of the game. They made it so if you wanted to unlock the operators, you had to grind them out. The reason they did that was because Ubisoft didn't think Rainbow Six Siege would succeed. They didn't think it would be a game that would still be played now. So they wanted to artificially increase the playtime by locking the operators behind these renown walls. So I understand why Ubisoft did it, but unfortunately the game grew in popularity, so this grinding wall made it seem a bit stupid because it's basically like, oh, you've got everything here, but you have to unlock it through time. And again, Mac points out in his review that it's not fair. You can't have a 5 versus 5 shooter where players who have been playing the game for longer have access to all the operators, whereas players who haven't been playing it for as long don't have access to all the operators. It's not very balanced, and in a versus multiplayer game, you should always have a balanced playing field. So I agree with his point there. I think it's 100% valid. I don't disagree with him. Again, I know why Ubisoft did it, because that's the way they planned Siege. They didn't think it would do as well. But I do agree with Mac 100%. It's stupid. Especially when you then consider it against the Starter Edition. The Starter Edition is, what, £11, as he quotes. And in that one, you only get 4 operators straight away, and then you have to heavily grind out the rest. But generally speaking, you've paid the Starter Edition price. So it's fair that you have to grind out all the operators because you've not paid full price. But paying full price should give you access to everything immediately. And I think, generally speaking, I agree. The only thing you should have to grind for, in my opinion, is skins. So, you know, that's one thing that me and Mac on Worth a Buy can definitely agree on. He then goes on to point something out that he gets rather wrong, and that this is one of the things again that I really annoyed me, and that is he says the game has fewer players now than it did at launch. Now this, generally speaking, really irritates me. It took me 30 seconds to Google this. I looked up the player stats for Siege. This is only from Steam, so this doesn't include Uplay or Xbox or PlayStation, but at launch of the game in December 2015, the average player numbers were 7,941. Currently for Siege, the average player numbers in the last 30 days have been 25,079. That is the average number of players. So that's basically, whenever you're looking at the game, that's the normal number of players that are online. Now, generally speaking, that is a 100% increase from launch. Yes, there was a slight increase in February, where there was an average of 30,000, and it's dropped since then, mainly because of that's Christmas sales and stuff. But generally speaking, the game's had a 100% player increase since launch, and that is something that he gets 100% wrong. And again, those numbers are only for Steam, so that's not including Uplay numbers, PC numbers, or Xbox numbers. So that's something he got wrong that I wasn't too happy with. Especially because you could just Google it, and that did irritate me with the review, just generally speaking. He then goes on to talk about how he thinks the game could be a lot better than it currently is, and again, I 100% agree with him. That's 100% correct. As I said earlier, Ubisoft didn't think Siege was going to be the hit that it was, so they didn't really put in complete amount of effort to try and get it to this polished standard, and yes, that has kind of impacted the game in general. When Siege was first in development, it was Rainbow Six Siege Patriots. It had a single player and a multiplayer campaign, and then they decided to drop the single player and focus solely on multiplayer. And because of that, they obviously focused on it, they released it, they didn't think it would do as well, so it's still got issues, and they're still trying to fix those issues now, but like I said, I think if Ubisoft had had more faith, the game would have been a lot more published and polished. Well, no, sorry, not published. Would have been a lot more polished than it is now. So I do agree with him there. It could be a lot better than it is. So when it comes to his overall review, Mac basically splits it up into two parts. He basically says if you enjoy multiplayer games, you enjoy those versus kind of gameplay modes, Rainbow Six Siege is like definitely worth buying. If you like a multiplayer game, there is no reason not to buy it. It's a difficult shooter. It has a lot of good aspects that a lot of games don't have these days. And he sings its praises and does say these are good aspects. He then goes on to say, if you're a person who wants a single player or a co-op experience, this game isn't worth buying. And again, I 100% agree with that. He's not wrong. If you only want a single player like co-op experience, you shouldn't buy this game. So again, I think that review is more than fair. I don't disagree with that. And again, he points out that the reason he wasn't impressed with the lack of content is because every Rainbow Six title before this one, before Siege, had both a single player fully co-op campaign and a multiplayer. And this is the first game of its kind that dropped the single player aspect. And again, I've said the reason they did that was because they wanted to focus on the multiplayer, and they didn't think that the game would be as good as it is. So I imagine what it probably was is Ubisoft probably had another Rainbow Six Siege title, or Rainbow Six title rather, in the works that they were going to release. They saw that Siege was still getting growth, and they went, right, we'll just focus on this. So that's probably why there isn't a single-player campaign. But again, I can understand why he's disappointed, considering every other title before it with the name had a single-player campaign in it. So I can understand why he's not happy with that. But again, I think it's not fair to let Overwatch get away with that, but penalise Siege for it. But yeah, generally speaking, that's my opinion of Mac's review. Like I said, overall, I actually agree with him in a lot of regards, and I think the issue at the minute is he's getting a lot of hate on his video by the Rainbow Six Siege fanboys who aren't willing to actually listen to his points. If you listen to what he says, he's actually making a lot of sense, and the things he points out are genuine issues. I mean, like seriously, at the minute on his video, I think he's looking at an equal number of likes to dislikes. It's around 1,300 and something. And I think that's unfair. I think the issue is the fanboys are just attacking him because they don't like people disliking their game. And what's funny is there are also all these reviews of his review that are disagreeing with him. And again, it's people that are coming at the game, coming at his review with hindsight of the entire game's lifespan, from launch to now. He's only giving his review as somebody who's played at launch, stopped playing, and played now. So he has every right to point out the cosmetic issues because those are the things that a person like him would notice. Those are the things that a new player would notice, which is what his review is aimed at. So generally speaking, the people that diss him and go, oh, you know, they fixed X, Y, and Z, so there's not actually like left all these bugs, are really not considering where the review comes from and who it's for. So like I said, I actually really like his review. There are only a few little gripes I have with it here and there, but it's a good review. And personally, like I think, guys, I think he deserves a lot more praise than he's being given. So, you know, like, at the minute, what I would recommend is, if you agree with me, head over to the video link in the description below and like his video. Give him some support. Because, like I said, his points are not wrong. He has good reason for saying them, and they are coming from a good place. So I think he deserves a lot more support than he's getting. If you want to just go over there and dislike him, please don't come back to my channel. Unsubscribe. I don't like people that don't give someone a fair chance to give their opinion. And I don't like people that just fanboy things without really considering their options. Also, I am aware that he has disabled the comments on his video. Again, I understand the reasons he's done behind that. Obviously, like I said earlier, there are going to be people that just go over to his video and fanboy it and dislike it, post all these stupid comments to him. So I understand why he's disabled comments. I'm not going to begrudge him that. You guys shouldn't either. Like, I could understand doing that. I'd do the exact same thing if I was in his position. Some people you just don't want to deal with. So, again, if you're going to hold that against him, I suggest that you just don't bother with my content either, because I do the exact same thing in his situation, and I'm not going to hold that against him, and you guys shouldn't either. Obviously, if you enjoyed this style of video, you enjoyed my review of Mac's review, feel free to hit that like button. Let me know you're enjoying this new style of video. I might look to do a few more of these if I can. Obviously, if you didn't like the video, feel free to dislike. That button is just there. If you're one of Mac's worth a buy subscribers who have just come to dislike because you assume I'm attacking him, feel free. Clearly you haven't watched the video. If you're new here and you like my content, feel free to subscribe. It'd be much appreciated. And other than that, guys, like I said, feel free to check Mac out. He's definitely worth giving a look to. Worth a Buy is one of the best review places out there for games, so it's always worth checking him out overall. And other than that, guys, I'll see you in the next one.